7 minutes ago, your own dispatch gave you the truth, officer. You simply decided not to hear it. Grace Bennett stood beneath the white lights of the Ashford County gas station with one wrist already secured and the second metal cuff open in Officer Caleb Ross's hand. A cold Maryland wind moved across the parking lot, carrying the smell of gasoline, wet pavement, and coffee from the convenience store behind them. Her 1968 Ford Mustang Fastback rested beside Pump 6, midnight blue paint reflecting the red and blue emergency lights in long broken streaks. To anyone watching, it looked like the kind of car people stared at. To Grace, it was 30 years of marriage, 2,000 weekends in a garage, and one promise she had never broken. Ross stepped closer. He was 33, white, broad-shouldered, and wearing the confidence of a man who believed the badge settled every argument before the facts arrived. You are being detained while I determine whether this vehicle was stolen, he said. Grace kept her voice steady. The registration is in the glove compartment. My name matches the insurance card. The full license plate does not match the stolen vehicle. The identification number will prove ownership in less than 1 minute. Ross glanced toward the Mustang, but did not move. You have repeated that several times. Because you have refused to check it several times. A few customers stood near the store entrance, phones lowered but recording. Marcus Reed, the mechanic who had serviced the Mustang that morning, waited beside his pickup truck with both hands visible. He had already told Ross that the car belonged to Grace. Ross had ordered him to step back. Grace could feel the pressure of the first cuff against her wrist, not painful, but deliberate. Public. Final. Her cup of coffee sat on the hood of the Mustang, steam disappearing into the winter air. Ross reached for her other hand. Do not make this more difficult. Grace turned her head just enough to meet the lens of his body camera. Your screen received the correction 7 minutes ago. The stolen car has a different plate, a different model year, and a different vehicle identification number. Ross's expression tightened. You do not know what my dispatch sent me. You looked at the message. Silence moved through the parking lot. Ross had looked. The small screen on his shoulder radio had lit up while Grace stood beside the car with her license, insurance, and keys placed on the hood. He had read the first line, lowered the volume, and continued questioning her as if confirmation were an inconvenience. You are interfering with an active investigation, he said. Grace drew a slow breath. She had spent more than 3 decades as an emergency room nurse. She knew the sound of fear pretending to be authority. She also knew how quickly a calm voice could be described as defiance when it came from the wrong person. I have answered every question, she said. I have offered 5 ways to verify the truth. You have ignored all 5. Ross closed his fingers around the second cuff. Turn around. Then headlights entered the lot from the county road. Not one vehicle. 3. The first was a black Command Sport utility vehicle followed by 2 marked units returning from a community fundraising event less than a mile away. Ross glanced toward them, irritated by the interruption. Grace did not turn. She watched the vehicle stop near the curb and saw a tall black man step from the lead vehicle in a dark command uniform. He had been smiling at someone inside the vehicle. Then he saw the Mustang. He saw the coffee on the hood. He saw the cuff around Grace's wrist. The smile vanished. He crossed the pavement quickly, but his voice did not sound official when it reached them. It sounded younger. Frightened. Familiar. Mom. Ross froze. The open cuff remained inches from Grace's hand as every person in the parking lot looked toward the man approaching them. Grace closed her eyes for one brief second. Not because help had arrived, but because the one person she never wanted to need had just seen exactly how far fairness had failed before learning her name. 2 hours earlier, Grace Bennett stood alone in the garage behind her small brick house, polishing the chrome trim of the Mustang with the corner of an old cotton cloth. The car had been built in 1968, but every inch of it carried a more recent memory. Her husband, Daniel, had found it 27 years earlier beneath a torn canvas cover outside a farm in Pennsylvania. The engine had barely turned. The seats were cracked. Rainwater had collected under the floor mats. Daniel had smiled at the rust and told her they were looking at a future family treasure. Grace had laughed then, but she had spent the next 12 years beside him rebuilding it one careful piece at a time. He handled the engine. She learned the wiring. He restored the suspension. She stitched the dark leather seats by hand. Their son Isaiah had grown up inside that garage, first sleeping in a portable crib near the workbench, then passing his father tools, and later learning to drive in the empty parking lot behind his high school. Now Daniel had been gone for 16 months, and the passenger seat still felt too quiet. Grace placed the cloth on the workbench and looked at the small brass plaque mounted beneath the dashboard. It carried Daniel's initials and the date they completed the restoration. That evening, the Mustang was supposed to be displayed at a county fundraiser supporting technical education for teenagers. The organizers planned to announce a new automotive scholarship in Daniel Bennett's name. Grace had almost refused the invitation. She did not know whether she could sit through speeches about the man she still expected to hear entering the garage. But Isaiah had called 3 times that week, reminding her that the program had been Daniel's dream. He wanted young people to build something they could be proud of, her son had said. Tonight is not about losing him. It is about what he left behind. Grace opened the driver's door and placed the event pass on the dashboard. Her registration and insurance card rested inside the glove compartment, organized in a clear folder exactly where Daniel had always kept them. She checked the license plate, then ran her hand over the midnight blue paint. Her phone rang from the workbench. Isaiah's photograph appeared on the screen, showing him in civilian clothes at a family cookout years before he became the public face of Ashford County law enforcement. "Are you on your way?" he asked when she answered. "I am leaving now. The program begins at 7. I saved you the chair beside me." Grace smiled. "You always save me a chair. Because you are always 10 minutes late. Your father taught me that." Isaiah laughed, but his voice softened when he asked whether she was all right. Grace looked at the empty passenger seat. "I will be." He offered to send a driver, but she refused. She did not want an escort or a marked vehicle. She wanted to arrive in the car she and Daniel had built together, carrying the proof of an ordinary life made meaningful by patience. Before ending the call, Isaiah told her to use the gas station on Route 9 because road construction had closed the entrance near the event center. Grace slipped her charcoal coat over her navy dress, picked up the keys, and turned off the garage lights. The Mustang started with a deep, familiar rumble that filled the space Daniel once occupied. As she backed into the driveway, she did not notice the patrol bulletin appearing across county dispatch terminals. A vintage blue Mustang had been reported missing after a test drive at a dealership nearly 20 miles away. The report contained only a partial license plate, an uncertain model year, and no verified description of the driver. Within minutes, someone would add one more detail to the call. Not a fact about the car, a description of the woman standing beside it. Officer Caleb Ross began his evening shift believing the most dangerous mistake a patrol officer could make was hesitation. He had repeated that idea so often that it had become part of the way he moved, spoke, and judged people before they finished explaining themselves. Inside the Ashford County Public Safety Center, fluorescent lights reflected from gray walls and polished floors while deputies changed shifts beneath a board filled with traffic alerts, court notices, and updated procedures. Ross signed the patrol log, checked his body camera, and clipped his radio to his shoulder. A younger deputy named Evan Miller approached with a thin folder. "Professional standards returned this," Miller said. "They want acknowledgments signed before Friday." Ross glanced at the label. It concerned 2 complaints from black motorists who said he had prolonged routine stops after their identification and vehicle records had already been verified. Neither complaint had resulted in formal discipline. Ross placed the folder beneath a stack of accident forms without opening it. "I will read it later." Lieutenant Lauren Pike stepped out of her office carrying printed instructions for a new 2-step vehicle verification policy. She reminded the shift that partial license plates were not enough for detention when model years, vehicle identification numbers, or ownership records could be checked. Ross accepted the page but folded it once and slipped it into his pocket. He had worked patrol for 9 years. In his mind, experience mattered more than another written procedure. At 6:23, dispatch announced that a vintage blue Ford Mustang had been reported missing from a specialty dealership outside Northbridge, nearly 20 miles away. The customer had taken the car for a supervised test drive, stopped near a service station, and disappeared while the employee entered the store. The first bulletin was incomplete. The dealership employee remembered the first letter and 2 numbers from the plate, believed the car was from the late 1960s, and could not provide a reliable description of the driver. Ross was driving west on Route 9 when a second caller reached the non-emergency line. The caller claimed a woman at the Ashford gas station appeared nervous beside an expensive blue Mustang and kept looking toward the road. The dispatcher asked whether the caller had seen her damage the vehicle, force the door, change the plates, or act unlawfully. The answer was no. Then the caller added that the woman was black, older, and dressed too formally for someone who belonged at a roadside gas station. That final description never appeared in the official missing vehicle report, but it entered Ross's thinking with more force than the uncertain plate information. He pictured a stolen collector car, an inexperienced driver, and someone preparing to leave before police arrived. Dispatch advised units to observe and wait for a complete vehicle match. Ross acknowledged the call, but increased his speed. 2 minutes later, the dealership sent an updated record showing the missing Mustang was a 1967 model with a temporary dealer plate. That information had not yet reached Ross when he turned into the gas station and saw Grace Bennett stepping from the convenience store with a cup of coffee. Her midnight blue Mustang stood beneath the canopy lights, clean enough to reflect the fuel prices above it. Grace walked directly to the driver's side, unlocked the door with a key, placed a receipt inside, and checked something near the dashboard. None of those actions suggested theft. But Ross was no longer observing separate details. He was arranging them around the conclusion he had already chosen. He parked his patrol vehicle behind the Mustang, blocking its path, and activated his emergency lights before speaking to dispatch. Grace looked toward the flashing colors, surprised but not alarmed. Ross stepped out with one hand near his radio. "Ma'am, move away from the vehicle." Grace closed the door gently. "Is there a problem, officer?" Ross studied her navy dress, charcoal coat, and the polished car behind her. "That depends on whether you can explain why you have this Mustang." Grace held up the keys. "Because it belongs to me." Ross heard the answer, but he did not receive it as information. He received it as a challenge. Grace placed her coffee carefully on the Mustang's hood and kept both hands where Officer Caleb Ross could see them. "My driver's license is in my purse, and the registration is in the glove compartment," she said. Ross stopped several feet away, his patrol lights moving across the wet pavement and the midnight blue paint. "Do not reach for anything." "I was not planning to." "Then step away from the car." Grace moved toward the front bumper. The cold wind lifted the edge of her charcoal coat, and she folded her hands in front of her. Ross asked for her name. She gave it. He asked where she had obtained the vehicle. "My husband and I restored it," Grace said. "We have owned it for 27 years. Ross looked at the polished chrome, the custom leather interior, and the event pass resting on the dashboard. "This is an expensive car." Grace waited for a question. None came. "What does that have to do with ownership?" she asked. Ross's expression hardened. "It has to do with whether your explanation makes sense." Grace studied him for one quiet moment. "Would my explanation make more sense if the car were cheaper?" Near the convenience store entrance, two customers stopped talking. Ross ignored the question and asked for identification. Grace pointed toward her purse on the passenger seat. "You may retrieve it, or I can, if you tell me how you want me to proceed." Ross opened the passenger door himself, removed the purse, and placed it on the hood. Grace told him where to find her wallet. He took her license and insurance card, then returned to his patrol vehicle. The records came back valid. Grace Bennett, 62 years old, Ashford County resident, active insurance, registered owner information available through an additional vehicle search. Ross returned holding the cards. "Your license address is different from the address attached to the older registration record." "I moved after my husband died," Grace said. "The insurance company has my current address. The updated registration is inside the glove compartment." "That is a convenient explanation." The words landed softly, but everyone nearby heard them. Grace's face did not change. "It is not convenient. It is true." A pickup truck entered the station and parked beside the air pump. Marcus Reed stepped out, recognized the Mustang, and walked toward them. "Miss Bennett, is everything all right?" Ross turned immediately. "Stay back." Marcus stopped. "I serviced that car this morning. It belongs to her." "Did I ask for your involvement?" "No, officer. I am only telling you what I know." Ross ordered him to remain near his truck. Marcus complied, but his concern remained visible. Grace looked at Ross. "You now have my license, my insurance card, my keys, and a witness who knows the vehicle." Ross glanced toward Marcus, then back at Grace. "People coordinate stories. He arrived after you did. That does not mean you are telling the truth." Grace drew a slow breath. "Then check the truth." She pointed with her eyes toward the glove compartment. "The registration is there. The full license plate is behind you. The vehicle identification number is visible through the windshield. The dealership that reported the other car can confirm the model year. The station cameras recorded me unlocking this vehicle with my own key. Ross's radio sounded. Dispatch began reading an updated description of the missing Mustang, including a temporary dealer plate and a different model year. Ross lowered the volume before the message finished. Grace noticed. Marcus noticed. The customers near the store noticed. Ross looked at Grace's calm face and mistook composure for calculation. You seem unusually prepared. Prepared for what? She asked. For being questioned. Grace looked at the Mustang, then at the wedding ring she still wore. I am prepared because this is not the first time someone has decided I must prove I belong beside something valuable. Ross stepped closer. Your attitude is not helping you. Grace met his eyes. My attitude is not the evidence. For 1 second, the only sound was the wind moving beneath the fuel canopy. Then Ross reached toward the restraints on his belt and said, We are going to continue this investigation with you detained. Grace did not move when Officer Caleb Ross reached for the restraints. Before you do that, she said, you have 5 ways to confirm the truth without placing me in custody. Ross paused, more irritated than curious. You do not decide how I conduct an investigation. No, Grace replied. But the evidence does. The customers near the store entrance remained still. Marcus Reed stood beside his pickup truck, watching every movement. Ross's body camera faced Grace, recording the midnight blue Mustang, the coffee cooling on the hood, and the woman who had answered every question without raising her voice. Grace looked toward the rear of the car. First, compare the full license plate. The stolen vehicle has a temporary dealer plate. Mine is a permanent Maryland plate registered in my name. Ross glanced toward the plate, but did not walk around the car. Plates can be changed. Then check the second thing. The vehicle identification number is visible through the windshield. Ross looked at the dashboard. The number sat exactly where Grace said it would be. Numbers can be altered. Marcus called from several feet away. That number matches the service record at my shop. Ross turned toward him. I told you to stay out of this. Marcus lifted both hands. I am staying here. I am also telling you the car belongs to her. Ross faced Grace again. What is the third thing? Open the glove compartment. The registration is inside a clear folder with the insurance documents. Ross had already opened the passenger door to retrieve her purse, but now he acted as though entering the car would compromise the investigation. I am not searching a vehicle until I know whether it is stolen. Grace's expression tightened slightly. You would not be searching it. You would be reading the ownership document I have given you permission to retrieve. His radio sounded again. Lieutenant Lauren Pike's voice came through clearly. Unit 12, hold detention. Updated dealership information indicates a 1967 model with a temporary plate. Confirm complete registration before taking further action. Ross pressed the volume button until her voice became a murmur. Grace watched his thumb leave the radio. That was the fourth way, she said. Call the dealership and ask for the complete description. Dispatch is still verifying. Dispatch just told you to wait. Ross stepped closer. You are not in a position to interpret police communications. Grace turned her eyes toward the security camera mounted beneath the fuel canopy. Then use the fifth way. Ask the station manager for the video. It will show me arriving, unlocking the Mustang with my key, pumping gas, and entering the store. A clerk appeared behind the glass door and nodded quickly. The cameras are working, he said. I can pull the footage. Ross did not answer him. 5 doors stood open. The plate. The vehicle identification number. The registration. The dealership confirmation. The security footage. Any one of them could have ended the encounter. Together, they left almost no room for honest doubt. But Ross was no longer investigating whether the Mustang was stolen. He was defending the decision he had already made. People who steal collector cars often prepare documents, he said. Grace stared at him. You have not read the documents. Your confidence is becoming part of the problem. My confidence is not evidence against me. Your refusal to follow instructions is. Grace looked down at her hands, still folded calmly in front of her. I have followed every lawful instruction you gave me. Ross removed the restraints from his belt. The metallic sound was small, but it changed the air around them. Marcus took 1 step forward and stopped when Ross looked at him. Officer, Lieutenant Pike told you to wait. Ross pointed toward the pickup. Return to your vehicle. Marcus remained where he was. I will not interfere, but I will witness this. Grace closed her eyes for half a second, then looked directly into Ross's body camera. Please state the reason you are detaining me after receiving information that the vehicle description does not match. Ross opened one cuff. You are being detained while I establish ownership and investigate possible obstruction. Obstruction of what? Grace asked. The verification you refused to perform? Ross reached for her wrist. At that same moment, less than a mile away, an empty chair waited beside County Police Chief Isaiah Bennett at the community fundraiser. His mother was 20 minutes late. His phone vibrated with an urgent call from Lieutenant Pike. Officer Caleb Ross closed the first cuff around Grace Bennett's wrist, while Lieutenant Lauren Pike's warning continued faintly through his lowered radio. Grace did not resist. She turned only as much as he instructed, keeping her breathing slow and her voice steady. The customers near the convenience store entrance watched in complete silence. Marcus Reed stood beside his pickup truck, his face tense with disbelief. Grace's coffee remained on the Mustang's hood, untouched beneath the white canopy lights. Steam rose from the cup for a few more seconds before disappearing into the cold Maryland air. Please activate your body camera audio clearly, Grace said. Ross adjusted his grip without looking at the camera. It is already recording. Then state the evidence supporting this detention. A vehicle matching the description of a stolen collector car is here, and you have failed to establish ownership. Grace looked toward the glove compartment. The proof is 6 feet away. You do not control this investigation. I am not trying to control it. I am asking you to conduct it. Ross guided her second hand behind her. The open cuff touched her wrist, but had not yet closed. For Grace, the sound of the first cuff had changed more than the encounter. It had turned a misunderstanding into a public judgment. She had spent 34 years treating frightened patients in emergency rooms, calming families during their worst nights, and teaching young nurses never to confuse urgency with certainty. Now she stood beside a car she had rebuilt with her husband while a stranger treated her calmness as evidence of deception. Less than a mile away, County Police Chief Isaiah Bennett sat at the front table of the Daniel Bennett Memorial fundraiser. The chair beside him remained empty. On the stage, a student from the County Technical Academy described how the new scholarship would help her study automotive engineering. Isaiah applauded, but his eyes kept returning to the entrance. His mother was never this late without calling. His phone vibrated against the table. Lieutenant Pike's name appeared on the screen. Isaiah stepped into the hallway before answering. Chief, I need to advise you of a developing incident, Pike said. Officer Ross has detained a woman at the Route 9 gas station in connection with the stolen Mustang bulletin. Isaiah looked through the ballroom doors at the photograph of his father displayed beside the stage. Why are you calling me personally? Pike hesitated. The woman's name is Grace Bennett. Everything around Isaiah seemed to lose its sound. Is she injured? No. She is calm and cooperative. I ordered Ross to delay detention while dispatch completed verification, but he lowered his radio volume and continued. What does the updated record show? The missing vehicle is a 1967 Mustang with a temporary dealer plate. Your mother's vehicle is a 1968 model with a permanent Maryland registration. The preliminary records do not match. Isaiah closed his eyes for one brief moment. Anger arrived first, sharp and immediate, but training followed it. You will take command of the scene, he said. I will not direct the investigation involving my mother. Understood. Preserve Ross's body camera, radio traffic, dispatch messages, and the station video. Check the restraints when you arrive. Isaiah returned to the ballroom and quietly informed the county executive that he had to leave. He did not explain why. He removed the prepared speech from his jacket pocket and placed it on the empty chair beside him. Outside, Pike's marked vehicle pulled to the curb as Isaiah entered the black Command Sport utility vehicle. 2 support units followed because the security detail had already been assigned to the fundraiser. Back at the gas station, Ross closed the second cuff. Grace's shoulders remained straight. Marcus spoke from beside his truck. Officer, the updated description does not match her car. Ross turned toward him. One more interruption, and you will be removed from the scene. Grace looked at the body camera. He is not interrupting. He is witnessing. Ross positioned her near the front of the Mustang. 7 minutes ago, your dispatch gave you the truth, Grace said. You simply decided not to hear it. Headlights appeared from the county road. 3 official vehicles entered the parking lot and stopped beneath the station lights. Ross looked over his shoulder as a tall black man in a dark command uniform stepped from the lead vehicle. The man saw the Mustang first, then the restraints, then Grace. His face changed. "Mom." County Police Chief Isaiah Bennett crossed the parking lot without looking at the patrol vehicles behind him. For 1 second, he was not the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in Ashford County. He was a son seeing his mother restrained beside the car his parents had rebuilt together. Grace met his eyes and gave the smallest nod, the same one she had used when he was a child and needed to know she was steady. Isaiah stopped several feet away. "Mom, are you all right?" "I am not injured," Grace said. "Lieutenant Pike is taking command." Officer Caleb Ross looked from Grace to Isaiah, and recognition moved across his face. His posture changed. His voice softened. "Chief, I did not realize she was your mother." Isaiah turned toward him slowly. "Would you be changing your conduct if you still did not know who she was?" Ross looked at the restraints. "I can remove them now. You will wait for Lieutenant Pike." The words were calm, but they left no room for argument. Pike stepped from her vehicle and approached Grace first. She checked the space between the cuffs and Grace's wrists, then asked whether Grace felt numbness, pain, or dizziness. Grace answered no. Pike instructed another supervisor to stand with Ross and preserve his body camera without interruption. "Officer Ross, do not mute, stop, or alter any recording," she said. "Your radio and mobile terminal will also be secured for administrative review." Ross swallowed. "Lieutenant, I was responding to a stolen vehicle report. Then you will explain your decisions after the scene is stabilized." Isaiah remained outside the investigation, exactly as he had promised. He did not order Ross suspended. He did not demand an apology. He did not touch the restraints. Instead, he looked at his mother and asked, "Do you want medical personnel called?" Grace shook her head. "I want the car verified." Pike nodded and began with the first fact Ross had ignored. She walked to the rear of the Mustang and read the full Maryland license plate into her radio. Dispatch confirmed the registration belonged to Grace Bennett. She checked the vehicle identification number through the windshield. It matched the same record. The station clerk brought a tablet containing security footage. The video showed Grace arriving alone, unlocking the Mustang with her key, pumping fuel, and entering the store. No forced entry, no plate change, no suspicious transfer. Pike then called the dealership that had reported the stolen vehicle. The manager confirmed the missing car was a 1967 Mustang with a temporary dealer plate and a black interior. Grace's car was a 1968 model with permanent registration and dark brown custom leather. The resemblance ended with the color and the name Mustang. Pike returned to Grace and unlocked the restraints. The second cuff opened first, then the first. The sound was quiet, but the entire parking lot seemed to hear it. Grace brought her hands forward and rubbed one wrist gently. Ross began speaking before anyone asked him a question. The original caller described a woman acting suspiciously. Pike looked at him. The caller reported no unlawful act. The vehicle matched the general description. The updated information did not. Ross glanced toward Isaiah. "Chief, I made a judgment based on what I had." Grace answered before her son could. "You made a judgment after being given what you needed." Ross looked at her, but there was no anger in her face. That made the silence harder. Isaiah finally spoke. "You were not required to know she was my mother. You were required to know what the evidence said." Pike instructed the station manager to preserve all exterior and interior footage. She directed dispatch to archive every message sent to Ross, including the correction he had viewed 7 minutes before applying the cuffs. Marcus Reed provided his name and statement. The customers near the entrance agreed to share their recordings. Ross stood beside his patrol vehicle while the scene he believed he controlled became a record he could no longer shape. Grace picked up the coffee from the Mustang's hood. It was cold now. Isaiah looked at the empty passenger seat and quietly asked whether he could drive her to the fundraiser. Grace placed the cup in a trash can and opened the driver's door. "You can ride with me," she said. "But I am driving my own car." By the time Grace Bennett and Isaiah reached the fundraiser, Lieutenant Lauren Pike had already begun preserving the evidence Officer Caleb Ross had tried to ignore. The body camera recording showed Grace standing beside the Mustang with her hands visible, offering her license, insurance card, registration, vehicle identification number, and permission to review the station cameras. It also captured Ross lowering his radio after dispatch announced that the stolen car was a different model year with a temporary dealer plate. 7 minutes before he applied the first cuff, his mobile terminal had displayed the same correction in writing. The notification remained open for 11 seconds. Ross had looked directly at it. He had not misunderstood the message. He had chosen to continue. Pike requested an independent administrative review before the end of the shift. Ross was removed from patrol duty and instructed to surrender his body camera, radio, and vehicle computer for evidence preservation. No conclusion was announced at the gas station. No punishment was delivered through anger. The same careful process Ross had denied Grace would now determine what happened to him. At the fundraiser, Grace parked the Mustang beneath the event center lights. Isaiah remained in the passenger seat for a moment, watching his mother hold the steering wheel where her wedding ring caught the glow from the dashboard. "We can go home," he said. Grace looked toward the entrance, where a photograph of Daniel stood beside a sign for the new scholarship. "Your father did not spend 12 years rebuilding this car so fear could decide where it belongs." She stepped out, adjusted her charcoal coat, and entered the building with Isaiah beside her. The guests had heard only that the program had been delayed. Grace did not explain what had happened. She sat in the chair Isaiah had saved and listened as the first scholarship was awarded to a 17-year-old girl who wanted to study automotive engineering. When the student thanked the Bennett family, Grace smiled through the weight of the evening. The Mustang remained outside, exactly where it was supposed to be. Over the following weeks, the investigation expanded beyond one traffic stop. Professional standards reviewed the station footage, dispatch records, witness videos, and the 2 complaints Ross had placed beneath a stack of forms before beginning his shift. Then they found 3 more cases. Each involved a black driver whose identity and ownership records had been verified early, but whose detention continued because Ross claimed their explanations felt rehearsed, defensive, or unusually confident. Comparable encounters involving white drivers had ended after routine verification. The difference was not one careless decision. It was a pattern. Ross appeared before an administrative command review board and was asked why he trusted an anonymous caller more than official records, a registered owner, a mechanic, a station clerk, and his own lieutenant. He said he believed he was protecting the public. Pike answered that public safety could not be separated from equal treatment. Grace was invited to provide a statement. She did not ask the department to protect her because she was the chief's mother. She asked them to reopen every complaint involving Ross and every similar case that had been dismissed without reviewing camera footage. "Justice cannot depend on whether the person in handcuffs has a powerful relative," she said. "It must arrive before anyone learns who is coming to defend them." The board removed Ross from field enforcement pending a final determination and ordered a broader audit of vehicle stops across the county. New procedures required officers to document full plate comparisons, vehicle identification checks, dispatch corrections, and reasons for continuing detention after ownership had been confirmed. Isaiah approved the reforms, but did not participate in Ross's disciplinary decision. Grace had insisted on that boundary. She wanted accountability strong enough to stand without her son's title. Months earlier, Ross had believed the Mustang was the most valuable thing in the parking lot. The investigation proved that what he had nearly taken from Grace was not a car. It was the ordinary right to be believed when every fact was already on her side. 6 months later, the midnight blue Mustang stood beneath the bright workshop lights of the Ashford County Technical Academy, surrounded by students carrying notebooks, socket sets, and the nervous excitement of people about to touch history. A small brass plaque beside the car identified the Daniel Bennett Automotive Scholarship, but Grace Bennett had refused to place her own name anywhere on the display. She wanted the program to honor the man who had taught their son that careful work mattered, especially when nobody was watching. Grace stood near the driver's door in a navy dress and charcoal coat, answering questions about the 12-year restoration. She explained how Daniel rebuilt the engine, how she rewired the dashboard, and how Isaiah once dropped a wrench beneath the transmission and spent an hour searching for it. The students laughed. Isaiah Bennett, still serving as county police chief, watched from several feet away without interrupting. That afternoon, the department released the final administrative findings concerning Caleb Ross. The review concluded that Ross had continued Grace's detention after receiving multiple confirmations that her vehicle did not match the stolen Mustang. Investigators also found that he had applied different standards during several previous encounters involving black motorists. Ross was removed permanently from patrol duties and later resigned after the county denied his appeal. Before leaving, he was required to appear before an administrative accountability panel and listen to testimony from drivers whose complaints had once been dismissed. He did not offer excuses. He admitted that he had treated suspicion as experience and confidence as guilt. His admission did not erase the harm, but it entered the public record beside the evidence he had ignored. The department reopened 5 earlier complaints, corrected internal findings, and issued written apologies to the affected drivers. Every county officer completed new training on vehicle identification, dispatch corrections, procedural bias, and the duty to end a detention when reasonable suspicion no longer existed. Supervisors also began reviewing stops in which ownership had already been verified, but questioning continued. Isaiah approved the policy changes, but Grace remained the person who gave them meaning. During the first training session, she stood before a room filled with officers and placed 2 photographs on the table. One showed the Mustang at the gas station beneath flashing lights. The other showed it inside the academy, surrounded by students learning how to build something with their own hands. The car did not change, she said. The facts did not change. Only the person looking at them changed. That evening, after the scholarship ceremony ended, Grace walked toward the Mustang with Isaiah beside her. The winter sky had cleared, and the pavement reflected the workshop lights. Isaiah reached for the passenger door, then paused. "Why did you not call me that night?" he asked. Grace rested one hand on the roof of the car. "Because fairness that appears only after someone learns your family name is not fairness yet." Isaiah looked down, understanding that his arrival had exposed the problem but had not created the truth. The truth had been there in the license plate, the registration, the identification number, the camera footage, and every calm answer his mother had given. Grace opened the driver's door and handed Isaiah the keys. He smiled. "You want me to drive?" She took them back before he could close his fingers around them. "You can ride with me." Isaiah laughed and walked to the passenger's side, the same place he had sat as a boy while Daniel taught Grace to handle the old manual transmission. The Mustang started with its familiar low rumble. As Grace guided it away from the academy, students gathered near the doors and watched the blue car disappear into the Maryland night. Caleb Ross had believed his badge allowed him to decide whether Grace belonged behind that wheel. The evidence proved the car had always been hers. Accountability proved that authority belonged only to those willing to see the truth before power gave it a name.